Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Fighting for My Inheritance Against an Entitled Aunt. Growing up, I was always close to my parents, but after they passed away in a tragic car accident, everything changed. My Aunt Karen, my mother's older sister, became a constant thorn in my side. She interfered in every aspect of my life, criticized everything my parents did, and made my life miserable. When my parents passed away, there will split everything evenly between my brother and me. However, my entitled Aunt Karen believed that my parents' property belonged to her. She started putting her stuff in my parents' office and claimed that she was the new owner. When confronted by my brother and our family attorney, she refused to leave, and things quickly escalated. My brother, Mark, and the attorney had Karen removed from the property, but that was only the beginning of our troubles. Karen continued to harass us, even going so far as to offer me a reasonable rent to continue living in my own home until I graduated high school. My brother and I stood our ground and refused to give in to Karen's demands. We called the police and had her removed from the property once again. Eventually, Karen moved to Colorado, but she still found ways to make our lives difficult. Years went by, and I received the news that Karen had passed away. Her husband called me to attend her funeral, but I declined. I had no interest in being a part of her life, even in death. However, the news of her passing sparked a new challenge for me. Karen's will stated that she had left everything to her husband, but I had reason to believe that there was more to the story. I contacted our family attorney and started digging into Karen's finances. What I found shocked me. Karen had been hiding money and assets, and it turned out that she had left a significant portion of her estate to me and my brother. It was a relief to know that we were entitled to what was rightfully ours, but it was also frustrating to think about all the years we had spent fighting with Karen. With the help of the family attorney, we were able to claim our inheritance and move on from the past. I still miss my parents every day, but I am grateful for the lessons I learned from this experience. I learned to stand up for myself and my family, and I also learned to never let entitled people take advantage of me. Looking back, I am proud of what my brother and I accomplished, and I know that my parents would be proud of us too. We were able to overcome Karen's entitled behavior and fight for what was rightfully ours. The next story is titled, Neighbor Decides Communal Garden is Now Hers, and Ruins It. Now, without going into too much detail, I live in Scotland and reside in what's called a tenement house. Imagine a block of flats but smaller and older. Very common here. Anyway, all the tenements on my street have a front and back garden. We own the front garden as it came with our flat, but the back garden is communal and is shared between all residents within our tenement. Now onto the entitlement. We have a neighbor who lives in the flat directly above us. We live on the ground floor. This will be important later. Now this neighbor, who we'll call N, has always been generally annoying and kinda insufferable. Always talking in a really slow tone as though you were inept. However, back in June, her headassery ascended to a new level. N has always been into her gardening, which there's obviously nothing wrong with, but she started coming up with a plan to use the back garden for her gardening. Now, on paper this was also fine. All she had to do was get the permission of all other residents within our tenement, of which there were about 10. She didn't do that at all. In fact, the first we learned of her plan was her slipping a piece of paper through our door that outlined what she was going to do. Not wanted to do, going to do. The plan itself wasn't great, but it was by no means awful, so my mum let it slide. Fast forward 2 months when all of a sudden, I come home, look out of my bedroom window, which overlooks the back garden, and see not the raised wooden beds and terracotta pots that had been proposed, but 15 plastic laundry baskets filled with soil, 12 empty milk bottles in place of colored enamel tins, and a massive duck-off compost bin. Safe to tell me and my mum were pissed. My mum had a strong word with N about it, and N claimed she'd remove the milk bottles by the end of the week. I shit you not, the milk bottles weren't removed for nearly 3 months, all while serving no purpose as there wasn't anything in them. In the meantime, everything else she'd been trying to grow had died a rapid death, but she'd done nothing about it. During her milk bottle removal ordeal, and also dealt with one of the many soil-filled laundry baskets now complete with rotting vegetation. How did she deal with it? Did she remove it and dispose of the contents accordingly? Of course not, this is what we're dealing with here. Instead, she tipped the basket up and over, dumping all the soil and dead plants onto the already overgrown grass, took the basket back to her flat and just left all the soil as it were. How my mum hadn't snapped by this point I have no idea, but credit to her. Over the next 2 weeks, 2 raised wooden beds were finally put in, but the plants in them also quickly died and, as of writing this, are still yet to be dealt with. And also added this weird metal beam archway thing between 2 of the laundry baskets and failed, to twist one of the longer plants around said archway. It was hideous. However, a small, and I do mean small, dose of karma was just around the corner. If you're a UK resident, you will remember Storm Arwen hitting a week or so back, and as a result of this, N's treasured archway was blown over completely and, as you would fully expect from N by now, is still to be dealt with. So here we are in December with an essentially trashed back garden. Laundry baskets with dead plants in them, raised beds with vegetation so dead it had begun to turn yellow, a crooked archway, an actual mound of soil and overgrown grass everywhere. Also, since our flat is on the ground floor as I mentioned earlier, our home value has almost certainly been damaged by this, which is even more problematic as we intend to move within the next few years. I should also note that we're not the only ones who are royally ducked off with N's improvements, but nothing more has come of it as of now, though my mum says she'll be elevating it to a higher level if nothing changes by the time we do come to move. Anyway, there is my story of the most entitled person I've met thus far in my near 18 years of life. The next story is titled, Neighbor Refuses to Help Because Her Water Bill Will Go Up. A little background before the story. I live in a small village, where all houses are close to each other. My friend lives next to a really entitled family. Their kid shouts all the time, and the father is never home. When he is, he usually fights with the mother. Let's call her Karen. Nobody likes them, and they hate everyone and everything. This happened 3 months ago. There was a fire at my neighbor's house. They live really close to my friend's house, and even closer to Karen's house. It was about 11 p.m. I was with my friend at her house. We had a sleepover. We saw smoke, and at first, we didn't pay much attention, because we thought someone was having a barbecue. But there was way too much smoke for that, so we ran to the street and saw our neighbor's house on fire. Luckily, they weren't home, but still it was awful. Then, our neighbors arrived. Someone probably called them. They got out of the car and just stood there, shocked. Someone called 911, but, as I said earlier, we're a small village and there aren't any fire department headquarters nearby. So, we try to help and get some things out of the house. Pictures, souvenirs, etc. Then the firefighters finally come. The fire started about half an hour ago. Some of us helped them, gave water from our houses, because the fire hydrant was too far away. They knocked to Karen's house to ask for water, and this is how it went. My friend's sister, FS, Miss, there's a fire at a house next to yours. Could you give water, so it won't spread to your house? Karen. No way. You idiots won't get my water. FS. But the firefighters need that water. Karen. No. How do you think I'll pay my water bill after that? FS. Losing her patience. Karen, your house could be on fire right now. Karen. I don't care. I'm not giving you the water. Go away. Then she closed the door. Me and my friend were standing right behind her sister staring at Karen and listening to the whole conversation. We couldn't believe it. This woman would rather have her house burned down than pay a slightly larger bill. Then my friend's mother found us and told us to go home, so we don't know what happened next. The last story is titled, I'm Not Your Gardener. Cast. Entitled Neighbors, Ends, High-Pitched Lady, HPL, and Tall Dude, TD, also, Nice Old Bloke, Knob. When I was much younger, I had the chance of living a bit far from my hometown in a semi-rural area, at some place with a nice green space, next to a very nice neighbor, with her own green space adjacent to mine. It was some closed neighborhood, with a few common expenses for maintenance of the inner roads and such stuff, yet not with a wah in the same way as in the USA, according to what I read around here. There were just a few homes there, between 25 to 35, I can't recall exactly now, and everybody had an equal vote on issues regarding the common spaces and issues. There was never any problem. My nice neighbor was a lady in her 50s. She was very funny, witty, smart, really lovely. She had a boyfriend, who used to be there from Friday to Sunday every week, and he was equally nice. Adorable people both of them. I always helped her with her green space, quite more than a garden, whenever I took care of mine, which was quite often. I didn't mind helping her with that, since her boyfriend wasn't able to. It wasn't that easy for him to do that stuff since he had some back issues and was getting treatment for it, and for me it wasn't a big deal. And after all the tasty stuff she cooked and gave me, "Hey, try this, tell me if you like it," was a recurrent sentence. It was the least I could do. Also, her 2 dogs were with me all the time when I was in her place, and they were adorable. Well, as it happens, one day they decided to move to some city quite a few hundred kilometers from there, and get married, so she put the house on sale. Some people came to see the house, which was beautiful. So, I was doing the usual gardening work at her place when the couple who later bought the house were first visiting. I didn't pay much attention, but I remembered afterwards it was them because she, the girl in the couple, had a very distinctive voice, in a very high pitch, yet not unpleasant. Her unpleasantness would show later, but not regarding her voice. Also, her husband was very much taller than her. Like 2 heads taller. TD, tall dude, from now on. One day my neighbor and her boyfriend said their goodbyes, left with me a few things to donate. The ones they couldn't take care of, some for me if I wanted. I didn't, save for one great cast iron pan that somehow, they wouldn't take, and left. I was sad to see them go, but they were chasing a good future together, so I was also happy for them. Well, the new neighbors, ENs from now on, they got there one day, and I had been told beforehand by the realtor, so I worked a bit on their green space in order for it to look nice. The ENs didn't say their hello, yet I didn't mind. They had their right to be less sociable than other people are, and unless they were annoying, I was okay with that. A couple of days after they moved, I was taking care of the grass in my property, cutting some dried branches of a tree, plum, and other things, and HPL called me. I'm translating. "Hey, boy, when you finish there you gotta do some work here too. The grass is quite grown, and we have more stuff to do." I was a bit confused at first, but then I remembered that when they first visited, I was doing gardening stuff for my former neighbor, and that's why she must have thought it was my duty. I got close to her and explained her that I was doing maintenance of my property, that I was friends with my former neighbor and about her boyfriend's situation and why I was helping her. She said, "Okay," and went inside her house. A few days later, could have been 3 days, there was the monthly neighbors meeting. After a few issues were debated, mostly about a few bumps in the dirt roads. Both ENs said they had an issue, and HPL said that I was refusing to do my chores and that I should get a reprimand and not be paid in full. I was quiet and calm and was about to speak when another homeowner, who was aware of my relationship with my former neighbor, said, "He was never getting paid. He doesn't do any work for any of us, he was helping her neighbor, that is." I added that I had already told her that and that I explained to her my relationship with my neighbor, and her boyfriend, and that I thought I made it quite clear. TD then said that when they visited the house, they saw me doing the gardening and assumed that it was included with the common expenses, so it could be said they bought the property under those assumptions. At that moment I was quite amused because the whole issue was ridiculous. I told them something like this, not the exact words, "After these years I can't recall every single term. I'm sorry that you thought my gardening came for free with the house. It came for free with the relationship I had with my former neighbor, and that's it. No one told you that I would be working for you for free, or under common expenses, and your own assumptions are just flawed, I'm sorry." At that point, HPL lost her temper and shouted at me that I was disrespecting her husband and her husband's authority, that I was rude and a bully, an accusation without any truth, and that I was purposefully refused doing their gardening. After her screaming show there was a very, very long and uncomfortable silence. I had never witnessed anyone shouting in those meetings, which were very amicable and quiet. So, I broke the silence and told her, "After what I'm going to say I will ask my new neighbors to explicitly point out in which ways I was, according to them, rude and a bully. I would also like to know in which ways I disrespected her husband and his supposed authority. And also, which authority do they think they have over me? On the other hand, they are right. I purposefully refused to do their gardening. And I will assure you that I will never do it, not even if they want to pay for it." They shut up and left before the meeting was over. Yes, we, the rest, stayed a bit afterwards talking about what happened. It was impossible not to. And then I went to the EN's neighbor, a nice old bloke, Knob, who invited me and a couple other homeowners over. He lived to the other side of the EN's. He offered us cappuccinos or teas, he seemed to know a lot about tea. While there I had this idea and I told him, "Hey, I can come a couple days a week for a little while to take care of your plants and trees, more like bushes, Really, and I can have a cappuccino here. He agreed. I had a triple interest in this. 1. The cappuccinos. 2. Angering ENs, who will see I do some gardening to their other neighbor. 3. NOB's granddaughter, who was beautiful, and I had already seen her around. It all went well. Cappuccinos were great, ENs were furious, and NOB's granddaughter ended up being a good friend of mine and introducing me to a friend of hers who would then become my girlfriend. Until she died only 6 months later, but that's another story. Oh, I also had another interest. NOB's library. He had great books and he lent them to me. Thank you for listening.